So glad you're with us for the Thursday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. As you know, Jim Garrity is away, and here in his place, we're happy to welcome Inez Stepman of the Independent Women's Forum. And Inez, it's always great to have you with us. Thanks for your time today.
It's always great to be here. Thank you.
And we have some topics that are right up Inez's alley today, so let's dive right in. We're going to be talking a little bit later today about some of the bizarre edits requested by Hamas in the 21-point Trump plan. We'll also be taking a look at why it's tougher for conservatives to actually hold events on campus now. But we start with the government shutdown. And we've gone through all the arguments, of course, from both sides. The clean resolution, for the most part, on the right. The Democrats wanting to add about $1.5 trillion in spending. But in addition to the fight over that, and we're not going to get another vote on possibly ending the shutdown until at least tomorrow, maybe the weekend, President Trump has decided he's going to exercise power that he now has, as well as his Office of Management and Budget Director, Russ Vought. And here is what Trump puts out on Truth Social today. He says, I have a meeting today with Russ Vought, he of Project 2025 fame, to determine which of the many Democrat agencies, most of which are a political scam, he recommends to be cut, and whether or not those cuts will be temporary or permanent. I can't believe the radical left Democrats gave me this unprecedented opportunity. They are not stupid people, so maybe this is their way of wanting to quietly and quickly make America great again. President DJT. And you know he just loved twisting the Project 2025 knife
I
in
love that.
there.
It's obviously just a perfect little troll.
So what exactly can he and Russ Vought do? And I know you have very specific ideas of probably what you'd like them to do. So what are those as well?
Yeah, this is really giving the administration an opportunity at DOGE 2, right? So what this gives an opportunity for the administration to do is to go through a lot of these programs and evaluate on several bases whether they have actual streams of funding that are appropriated, what type of appropriations that funding is, and what their status is under the government shutdown. And then for those that don't have particular types of appropriated funding, it gives them the opportunity to review whether or not they want to continue those programs and to continue paying those particular bureaucrats. So yeah, I mean, I love the way that the administration is playing this. It's kind of a, heads I win, tails you lose sort of situation. It's so unusual as somebody on the right to watch Republicans be competent and win one of these fights and these exchanges, honestly. The other thing, of course, aside from Russ Vought cackling and, tenting his fingers in the corner over there, is that we're not going to see the same kind of shenanigans with Republican White House as we have in shutdowns past. We're not going to see national monuments roped off. We're not going to see the attempt to shut down the privately run Mount Vernon. We're not going to see shut down theater. And I think not only do I believe Republicans are going to win this fight politically, I think Americans are going to realize two related things. One, that for a lot of Americans, this won't affect their lives until you start to really get to some of those programs that are going to run out of money weeks from now, months from now, right? So they'll realize that actually a lot of what the government does not affect your life. But then the second piece, which is the more negative piece, I think we're going to realize just how many Americans are connected to working with the government, right? If this goes on long enough. I think it's about it's like 12-13% of Americans work directly for governments, whether I think that's federal or state. But then there's all the contractors, then there's all the NGOs that are being funded by the government. I wouldn't be surprised if 1 in 4 Americans, if you add up all of these things, works with the government or related to the government in such a way that this impacts their lives. So there's going to be a divide, and we're all going to see if this goes on long enough, right? Between the 3/4 of the country that earns the money to fund the government and the 1/4 of the country whose jobs are reliant on that money.
So I don't know if Russ Vought has called you, Inez, but if he did, where would you tell him to focus?
Honestly, this is a very nitpicky thing. I wouldn't know the exact programs, but I imagine what he's evaluating on the basis of is exactly what the line item appropriation for various things is, because the executive has enormous leeway where things are not actually specifically appropriated. We saw this with the U.S. aid fight, right? We saw this that recently got affirmed in a certain way in the Supreme Court. that the president has a lot of leeway when Congress really hasn't specified. They just say, here's some money for some stuff. And a lot of appropriations are like that. And so a shutdown provides the opportunity then to divide, okay, what are really essential functions? What are really essential programs? Who are really essential employees that are administering those essential programs? And what is the bucket of money that is basically labeled, Congress has labeled stuff to do stuff? I'm exaggerating, but only slightly. It's usually the department shall, blah, 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 some vague stuff, right? And so I think it's basically going to be the same process as with DOGE. You're going to go through and look at the different funding streams, and when you don't need people, you riff them, you lay them off. This is what Russ Vought has been waiting for.
Yeah, everything's at the discretion of the secretary or the administrator and things like that. So if Trump and Vought get aggressive and do so quickly, do you think that changes the Democrats' calculation on the clean extension?
It should. It will also force a confrontation within the Democratic base. It's pretty clear that Chuck Schumer is doing this against his own better judgment, several months ago, is doing this at the demand to, quote unquote, do something, right? He's doing this because he doesn't want to be primaried from the left. He doesn't want the kind of Tea Party-esque rebellion, which is already brewing among Democrats who, frankly, it's not that they've never been in the political minority in political memory, but they have never been actually in the minority of the country because those leftist institutions always continue to function, and the power of the media is much diminished. So they really haven't felt what it means to lose in a long time, and they're really furious about it. And so I think Democratic leadership is stuck between a rock and a hard place. They know that it's popular with their base to, quote unquote, do something. But then the second part of their base that is not as radically progressive, it's not that they're sane, it's that that's exactly those people in Northern Virginia, those professionals, the people who work for government, the people who work for contractors. That is the professional managerial class of their base. And those people are going to start getting really pissed in a couple weeks, especially if some of them get furloughed and they don't come back with full pay. So, I mean, I think this is going to set up a conflict within the Democratic base.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see. One exit note here. One of the things Republicans have repeatedly pointed out is that the Democrats want to pay for health care for illegals. The Democrats have claimed that's a lie. Then the Republicans showed the Democratic legislation and shows that there is a provision in there for that. A lot of the money does, in fact, that the Democrats want to spend here would go towards renewing Obamacare subsidies. And I find it fascinating, Inez, that the Democrats are pulling their hair out here about how much premiums are going to skyrocket if taxpayer funds aren't used to help people pay their Obamacare premiums. It's quite an indictment of Obamacare, even though they're not willing to say it directly.
Yeah, those were supposed to be temporary subsidies. But like with every promise that was made in Obamacare, I mean, really, this is one of the most frustrating things about following politics for a longer period of time, is it doesn't matter if you win on the claims 10 years later. Obama and Democrats lied over and over again. They lied about how much Obamacare would cost. Famously, Obama said you could keep your plan. I mean, none of us basically have gotten to keep the plans that we had pre-Obamacare. I know for the younger members of the audience, this will sound crazy to you, but when I was in my early 20s, there was no, on your parents' insurance till 26, right? I had high deductible insurance. It was called basically catastrophic insurance. And I paid for anything that I would have to do day to day, but above $5,000, it was basically fully covered. And that was considered catastrophic, sort of emergency coverage. But it cost me like $70 a month, $80 a month. It was very reasonable. And it was very doable for a young person who is healthy and wants to, make sure that if you get hit by a bus or get cancer, you'll have coverage. Now, even the gold-plated plans don't cover, 90, 100% above the deductible. They don't even do that in the fancy plans that you pay $1,800 a month for now. I had better health insurance for $80 a month before Obamacare. And I think there are a lot of people in America who are in that position. They know that the premiums are crazy. And Obamacare has made all those problems worse against all of those promises. And it's just so irritating to go back in time and remember all the things we knew were not true, that it was going to come in under $1 trillion in cost, that these subsidies would be temporary, that people would not be kicked off their plans. I mean, every single critique of Obamacare, in 2009 has come true.
Absolutely right. Yeah. Our family insurance deductible was $3,000 before Obamacare. It immediately quadrupled, and it's not gotten better since then. So thanks a lot, Barack. All right. Well, that was supposed to be the good martini, and for the most part it was, but a little bit of sour taste there on the fallout, the real fallout of Obamacare. But here's some good news. Once again, I am wearing a shirt from Mizzen and Main. A couple Saturdays ago, I got a couple of boxes from Mizzen and Main with about 5 or 6 shirts and a couple pairs of pants, and been wearing them each day this week as Mizzen and Main has been our sponsor. Started with the golf shirt and then the short sleeve shirts with the buttons down the center. And yesterday was kind of a more casual dress shirt, and today a little more formal dress shirt. But each one fits really nice. Very comfortable, very light, and very great material, I think. It's not your typical just cotton, as we'll explain here. They are on the cutting edge of fabrics. Mizzen and Main makes classic menswear with performance fabrics, so it's effortless to look sharp and feel great. Mizzen and Main actually invented the performance fabric dress shirt over 10 years ago, and since then they've perfected it with modern fabrics. The shirts and pants look refined, yet they're stretchy, lightweight, moisture-wicking, wrinkle-resistant, and completely machine washable. No ironing or dry cleaning necessary. So right now, Mizzen and Main is offering our listeners 20% off your first purchase at mizzenandmain.com, promo code 3ML20. That's Mizzen, spelled M-I-Z-Z-E-N, and Main, M-A-I-N.com. Promo code 3ML20, 3ML, the number 20, for 20% off. Mizzenandmain.com, promo code 3ML20. And if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen and Main stores in select states. All right, and as yesterday marked, I think it was 3 weeks since the assassination of Charlie Kirk out in Utah. Still absolutely stunning and hard to believe that it's actually true. So much reaction, so many thoughts since then. And just a couple days after the fact, you put out a tweet that got our attention here in the 3 Martini Lunch. We actually talked about you when you weren't here, in a good way, of course. And your thoughts on how the left would actually use this horrific event to their advantage to stifle speech. Here's what you wrote back on September 12th. This assassination will accomplish what the left has tried to do for so long: significantly shut down conservative speech on college campuses. Not because of a lack of bravery, but because of logistics. No more outdoor events. No more events without very serious security. And that costs big money that most organizations don't have. And universities are only too happy to say they can't manage. Already they were using security concerns to punish right-wing organizations and prevent them from hosting speakers. Now there's a real reason: the assassin's veto. And your prophecy has come true. New York University Law School, this is from the Free Beacon, appears to have canceled a Federalist Society event scheduled for October 7th because administrators feared that protesters would disrupt it, according to people familiar with the matter and emails obtained by the Free Beacon. The cancellation has raised concerns about the heckler's veto and comes as the White House Anti-Semitism Task Force has vowed to investigate NYU, which last year settled a lawsuit alleging that the university failed to crack down on unsanctioned anti-Israel protests. Now, NYU's Federalist Society chapter had invited the conservative legal scholar Ilya Shapiro to discuss his new book, Lawless: The Miseducation of American Elites. Shapiro has criticized anti-Israel protesters and taken schools to task over their handling of encampments. He's also been the target of protests on other campuses. And so basically what happened here is the school reached out to the Federalist Society and said, hey, how about we move it from October 7th? That could be an incendiary day, but we might have to move you to this basement facility, which I assume would mean a much smaller capacity. The group says, no, the hecklers don't get the veto. We want to hold this on October 7th, mainly because this is the only day that works for Ilya Shapiro. And then the school just says, no, we can't even do it that week at all. So I don't know that they would do this for a left-leaning speaker. And the fact that they're saying we can't do this because of the protest that's likely to happen feeds right into your concerns from a couple weeks ago.
Look, this has been happening for a long time, but now they have a reason to do it, right? So there has been this back and forth, just like on many free speech matters for so-called speech codes, right? Free speech zones, where the right or organizations like FIRE adjacent to the right have won in court But nevertheless, the problems continue because schools just are willing to settle every few years in court with the particularly gutsy student who takes it all the way to federal court and settles. They'd rather pay off that money to those students than deal with the mob that is getting ginned up on college campuses. And now they have this major new component, which is, the security that was necessary before was exactly for the heckler's veto, right? So maybe you need like a burly guy in the front in case somebody bum rushes the stage. If you're a high profile speaker like Charlie Kirk, maybe you need either a bulletproof vest or you need somebody scanning the crowd, waiting for somebody to maybe take a pot shot at you. Now you're talking about Secret Service level security that is going to be necessary. It's massively expensive. And schools in the past, those protections for free speech that in cases in the past, the schools have claimed we had budgetary constraints. How much of our budget are we expected to spend on a single speaker? Doesn't that harm free speech if we can't invite anyone else, other than Ben Shapiro, for example, because we have to spend all of our money on security for Ben Shapiro. And the reason that they lost those cases is only because, basically the court said, this is not that much money. Like, look at your budget. Look at this. Like, this is an excuse. It's pretextual. Now it may not even be pretextual. They may legitimately have to use up a huge portion of their budget in order to make campus safe for conservative speakers, for right-wing speakers. So it's moved from a heckler's veto to an assassin's veto, and the dollar amount has gone up accordingly. I think it's going to be a massive problem. I think it's something the Trump administration needs to address. They've done an excellent job in terms of other violations, both of free speech and of civil rights laws that universities have been doing for decades. They have threatened federal money and they've gotten very good results that way. I think this is something they should consider, essentially threatening university funding from the federal government if they can't make their campuses safe for basic right-wing speakers. They can't make their campus safe for debate. Because the left is, stochastically terroristic, right? To steal their phrase. If university campuses can't make the campus safe for right-wing speakers, and of course left-wing speakers, but that's never an issue, right? It's not that, and I'm saying repeating right-wing only because it's not an issue on the right. But now they're using the very legitimate security concerns because of an assassination, a completed assassination against Charlie Kirk, to basically prevent other conservative speakers from speaking. This is going to go to the courts, but I think the courts are not the solution here. It's too slow, and universities are too willing to settle with an individual plaintiff. I think that we have to threaten their federal money. I hope the Trump administration is working on that now. I know my organization has passed on these ideas to them. I really think this is something that the Trump administration can do something about very quickly. Universities have to eat this cost. And frankly, it's only fair because they've fomented the ideas to begin with that have made it so difficult and so dangerous for conservative speakers on campus.
Does it even dawn on these administrators that when the left-wingers take over the quad or commandeer buildings or block students from going to class who aren't part of their protests, that they sit there going, I don't know, free speech, we gotta tread lightly here. We just not sure what to do about this as they're trashing campus. But if the left is threatening a Republican speaker, well, what are you going to do? We can't secure the event. Do they even understand the double standard they're employing here?
I think they do understand it. It's simply ideological. You make things difficult for your political enemies. They don't want conservative speakers on campus. First, because they disagree with them, and also find them whatever hate mongers or whatever it is that Ta-Nehisi Coates said about Charlie Kirk. But second, because it causes a headache for them, and it causes a headache for the administration as the even crazier students that they have been inculcating and indoctrinating into behaving this way for decades take matters into their own hands. Then they have to discipline their own students. Then they're unpopular with the faculty lounge. It's just a whole basket of problems that administrators in college campuses would rather not deal with, but they're required to deal with, especially if they're taking federal money. It is a ridiculous concept that it is unsafe. And I'm using this word for once in a real way. It is legitimately unsafe without major security for anybody right of center to hold a conversation on campus. So, this is a problem universities have a huge hand in creating, and they're going to have to pony up the money for the solution, which is going to be that, high profile conservative speakers are going to have, it's going to be indoors. It's going to have to be ticketed. It's going to be, hundreds of thousands of dollars in security because that's what's necessary.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. They won't even basically tell the left-wing students, hey, you got to respect the space here. You got to let this happen. This is part of why we exist, is to have this free exchange of ideas on campus. But instead, they're ideologically in sync, unfortunately, with this radical crowd. And unfortunately, they're feeding into the radical crowd. They're encouraging them half the time. So just very, very frustrating. So I don't know how those folks sleep at night as they stifle free speech, but even they should be buying Boll and Branch sheets. Mrs. Columbus and I love our new set of Boll and Branch sheets. I talk about it all the time. I love the deep pockets because we also got the new mattress, and a lot of the sheets don't. It's a thick mattress, so some of the sheets don't get all the way into the corners, and the corners pop off. Not Boll and Branch. They fit great. Also, super soft. You get a great night's sleep, and the amazing part of Boll and Branch sheets is that they get softer with each wash. I don't understand how that works, but it's true. Also, they're made with the highest quality, 100% organic cotton and durable designs. They're also available in a new limited edition fall colors for a deeply comforting bedroom, and it comes with a 30-night worry-free guarantee. So start building your sanctuary of comfort this fall with Boll and Branch. For a limited time, get 20% off your first set of sheets plus free shipping at bollandbranch.com/3martini. You're going to want to spell that all out, 3martini. That's Boll and Branch, BOLLAND, branch.com/3martini to save 20% and unlock free shipping. Some exclusions do apply. All right, Inez, we're getting close to the deadline for Hamas to accept or reject the Trump 21-point plan for Gaza. Israel, of course, on Monday said it was fully on board, although it did make several requests, and a couple of them were agreed to, and so there were some changes to the deal. But when it comes to Hamas, they have done what you expect Hamas to do. This is from the Times of Israel. Basically, Hamas is saying, yeah, we're all on board. Just got a couple of revisions here that I'm sure you'll have no problem with. So according to a Palestinian source, quote, Hamas wants to amend some of the clauses, such as the one on disarmament and the expulsion of Hamas and faction cadres. Hamas leaders also want, quote, international guarantees for a full Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip and guarantees that no assassination attempts will be made inside or outside the territory. Quote, so far there are two views within Hamas. The first supports unconditional approval because the important thing is to have a ceasefire guaranteed by Trump, provided that the mediators guarantee Israel's implementation of the plan. But others have, quote, great reservations on important clauses. They reject disarmament and for any Palestinian citizen, meaning Hamas, to be taken away from Gaza. So, except for point number one, which is getting rid of Hamas and de-radicalizing the Gaza Strip, they're totally on board with this. So I don't know exactly what their official answer is going to be, but it's pretty sure that their attitude towards this hasn't changed at all.
Yeah, I mean, this was always going to be the problem. When I first read, the contours of the plan that the Trump administration proposed, I thought, well, this sounds like a great plan if you have two reasonable actors. Even in a hot war where they hate each other, if you had two reasonable actors, this is a really good plan. But implementation with Hamas is going to be, I mean, it is going to make this plan rise or fall, right? I do think it's significant that all of these Arab states signed on, that Qatar signed on to this. I think it is a significant step forward in diplomacy in that way, because it shows that the Arab world is willing to accept this solution, right? This plan from the Trump administration. And in that sense, I think it's a great diplomatic victory. Whether or not it's actually able to be implemented with Hamas, I have serious doubts. And I also think Israel can't probably accept anything short of this plan, because the major war aims they have, right, are two war aims, sometimes in conflict with each other: get back the hostages and essentially make the Gaza Strip a Hamas-free zone and demilitarize it, make it not able to launch another attack like October 7th. And those are two very existential aims for the country. So I don't know. This is gonna take some very hard pressure. I mean, I think here this is where the Arab backers and friends of Hamas are going to have to basically say, you're done, or we're just going to continue this war until you're done in a different way. So we'll see how much influence they actually have over Hamas, especially given the fact that their major backer has gotten so much weaker after the attacks on Iran.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. The Qataris were supposedly the broker. They've also said, like you said, that Hamas needs to take this deal as it is. So we'll see if they listen. Even if they do agree, it's not going to be that long before they violate it. I'm sure it's
Right.
just
The question is going to be follow up, and it's going to be what Qatar and what their essentially friendly Arab countries to Hamas actually, how much they cut Hamas loose, and how much they just let them twist in the wind and move forward with this plan. So, because
yeah.
they're not going to either they're not going to accept it, or they'll say they'll accept it and try to violate it as soon as they can.
Exactly. Yeah, we've seen this movie before, unfortunately. Real quick, Inez, today is Yom Kippur, and there was an Islamic terrorist attack against a synagogue in Manchester in the United Kingdom. Not a surprise. The photos make it very clear what was happening here. Yet the journalism here is typically vague. The UK, to their credit, has declared it a terrorist attack, but here's the AP lead. An assailant drove a car into people outside a synagogue in northern England and began stabbing them, killing 2 and seriously wounding 3 in a terrorist attack on the holiest day of the Jewish year. And that's about as strong as it gets. Earlier headlines from the AP: car and knife attack at UK synagogue on Yom Kippur kills 2. Yahoo, 2 dead, 3 wounded in UK synagogue attack. Even though we knew exactly what had happened there, they don't want to put it in the headline, and the AP still can't even explain it in the lead.
I mean, that's not anything new, right?
No.
These are always the passive voice headlines around Islamic terrorism and particularly Islamic terrorism against Jews. But so the headline piece is not a surprise. What is also not a surprise, but is deeply saddening. I saw Konstantin Kisin tweet out something basically saying, "I know everyone is angry about this. It's my sad duty to remind everyone to watch their words and what they say about the terrorist, what they say about the motives of the terror attack, what they say about, for example, Muslim immigration to the UK, because I'm here to warn you, you can get arrested." Obviously, he doesn't support all that, but it's just a sad commentary on the state of free speech in the United Kingdom, that even talking in a blunt and direct way about where these attacks are coming from. And we don't have all of the details on this. I feel pretty comfortable, guessing what ideology is behind these attacks, right? And everybody sort of knows. And I almost never jump the news in that way. It just seems extremely likely that this is an Islamic terror attack. It came immediately after ISIS called on Muslims to attack during this Yom Kippur period, and it was directly on a synagogue during Yom Kippur. I don't buy it, frankly. I've heard a lot of people, through sort of extended friends of friends chains. People are thinking about leaving the UK. Jews are thinking about leaving the UK. There are really only 2 places to be Jewish that are safe. One is Israel, even during a war, and the other one is the United States of America.
It's tragic. The decline of the UK is so rapid and so intense right now. It's hard to fathom that it's real, but it really does seem to be. When you see these hundreds and thousands of people getting arrested for what they wrote on social media, it's just mind-boggling.
Can I add something even more disturbing in a way? I thinking about the future of the UK and contemplating a world without England in a very real sense. The problems I see, basically the people waking up to the problem that untrammeled Islamic migration into the UK has caused, not just for Jews, but for the entire concept of England and of the United Kingdom, all the freedoms that they cherish, the culture that they, shared at one point. The solutions are going to have to get more and more radical, and people's understanding of the problem is not keeping up with it, to the point where now you see when they do have these demonstrations after October 7th, where it's just a lot of Islamic men, marching, in a very physically aggressive way, and the police there aren't armed. So it is almost, you start to sympathize almost with the cowardice of the police, and not clearly police. They not to the point where they're arresting the one guy flying the Union Jack, right? But you start to sympathize because you realize actually the physical situation on the ground has changed. You can't have, 10 cops without guns to control very clearly willing to do violence band of men. And that problem is going to get worse. So at some point, they're going to have to basically cede, even if they didn't politically cede it a long time ago. The idea of no-go zones, the idea of Islamic control over just territory within Britain and governed the way that Islamic countries are governed. They're not going to have any way to stop it other than like sending in the military, which is an extremely radical solution, right? And so it's essentially territory taken without firing a shot. And I just don't see, even physically on the ground, those videos of the confrontations between the police and then the angry protesters. There's nothing the police can do, like in a very real physical sense. There's nothing the police can do. Even if people are blatantly breaking the law, they're afraid to arrest them, not only because of political correctness. That has been the reason for the last 30 years. But now the reason is I'm not sure the police could carry off an arrest in that situation. So, I mean, it is bad. It's going to get worse unless something radically changes in the UK.
Yeah, and the prime minister there has no intention or doesn't have the ability to do what needs to be done to try and reverse course. He's basically placating them at every turn. So, Inez, we did actually have some good news on this one. It seems like every martini ended up on a sour note, but always appreciate you filling in for Jim, and we'll do it again one more time next week. See you then.
See you then. Always appreciate it.
Thank you. Inez Stepman of the Independent Women's Forum in for Jim today. Please subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch podcast if you don't already. Tell your friends about us as well. Also, thank you for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow all of us on X. Inez is at Inez Felcher. Jim is at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corombos. Have a terrific Thursday and tune in again Friday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.